movie was kind of a letdown, to be honest, when I really think about it overall. What's up, YouTube? It's JackalGoldKick. So, in this video, I'm going to be reviewing the movie Five Nights at Freddy's, which I believe came out last year. I'm late to seeing this, but I was able to see it thanks to Goth Boy Drippin'. Shout out to him. Go subscribe to his YouTube channel. Because of him, I was able to get access to Amazon Prime, and one of the movies on there that I checked out was Five Nights at Freddy's. I was curious about this film, and this also gives me the chance to speak on Five Nights at Freddy's again because I actually do want to say something about this. So, okay, back in the day, I actually did a rant video on Five Nights at Freddy's, but I don't hate it anymore. I don't feel the same way I do about Five Nights at Freddy's as I did in that rant video I made years ago. When I recently watched some of the stuff about it, I watched a short film based on it from I think this guy named Jack Pound, I think was his name. And then I seen some other stuff about Five Nights at Freddy's, and it grew on me, and I grew to like it. I think it's an interesting world. I think the Five Nights at Freddy's characters themselves is interesting. There's some interesting lore. I think it's pretty cool. I don't hate it anymore, and I don't have the same views as I did in my rant video from years ago. And I was interested in this movie because I've always liked the idea of them doing horror movies about like animatronics. Now, they did do one before this, but it wasn't really about Five Nights at Freddy's. It was called Willy's Wonderland. Now, I really wasn't a fan of that film. I liked the concept. I liked Nicolas Cage, but that film just didn't work for me. I don't know. I don't know. It just didn't work for me. I think it's because Nicolas Cage didn't really talk in it, and it was just kind of a repetitive film. It was just he kills one animatronic, cleans up, kills one animatronic, then cleans up the other one. I think it would have been better if he talked, and I don't know. That film just didn't work for me. I was interested in this film when it came out. I was like, all right, Josh Hutcherson's in it. He's a pretty good actor. I remember him from Zathura. Matthew Lillard is in it. Cool. And I checked the movie out, and I gotta say, like, I found it somewhat watchable, but it was like I was also let down. I would say this movie for me was like 50-50. It was kind of watchable, and there were some things I liked about it, but I was also kind of let down. I've heard bad things about this film. This film got negative reception when it came out, and I can see why it did because the movie's called Five Nights at Freddy's. And most of the film definitely don't feel like a lot of it is even about Five Nights at Freddy's. It's more about other stuff. The overall premise of this film is you have this main character, Mike, who's played by Josh Hutcherson, who does a pretty good job in this film as an actor. He's a security guard, but he gets fired because he attacked someone that he thought was taking the kid, but was actually the parent taking the kid. He's offered a job at this Five Nights at Freddy's place to watch it at night, let no one come in, look after the place. The person that gives him that job is Matthew Lillard. It's cool to see him in here. And he's also taking care of his sister. He's also dealing with some drama with this woman who has like a vendetta against him and wants the kid back, who is Mike's sister, the main character. And then you have this other plot going on where back when he was younger, he lost his brother at this like park or in the woods somewhere, and that's something they touch on a lot. They make a connection with that through the animatronics at the Five Nights at Freddy's place, and he tends to go to sleep sometimes or a lot of times at the job trying to discover what happened. And like in the film, I think it's like showing that the kids that are in the animatronic suits are also in his dream, and he's trying to figure out like what exactly happened to his brother. And basically, what you find out in the movie is that the leader of these animatronics is actually Matthew Lillard. He's a villain, and he killed these kids and put them in these animatronics, and that's what these animatronics are. And it's connected to also what happened to Mike's brother. His brother was taken away. So that's like the overall synopsis and concept for this movie itself. And like, I thought the film was watchable, and I liked the film when it first started. You know, I like Josh Hutcherson as an actor. It was cool to see Matthew Lillard in there. He gave a pretty good performance. I thought the lighting in the film was a bit too dark. I had to turn the brightness up on my TV. I was like, this is kind of a dark film. Could barely see anything. So I had to turn the brightness all the way up. I think one of the first issues I noticed when I was watching the film is they should not have made this PG-13. I feel like if you're making a horror film and there's people going to be killed, especially by animatronics, it should not be PG-13. You got to show gore. You got to show that stuff. So it should have been rated R. That was the first mistake. And then some other issues I noticed with this movie is as it got along and as I got about an hour in, I started to notice like the biggest issue with this film. It's called Five Nights at Freddy's, and most of the film is barely even about the Five Nights at Freddy's. It's like, what the fuck? The film is more about Mike and his sister and the stuff with them and the stuff with him losing his brother. And also, there's this other character in the film named Vanessa. She's the daughter of Matthew Lillard. She knows a lot about the place. She gives exposition to Mike about what the place is. She has some involvement in the story, and the movie's also about her. And it's like, why is most of this movie about these characters when it's called Five Nights at Freddy's? You know, and a lot of the film, when Mike's at the Five Nights at Freddy's place, he's not even doing his fucking job. He's sleeping most of the time. And it's like, that's not even how it was in the game. The security guard was awake and he had to look at all the screens and crazy shit would happen. A lot of times in the movie, he was asleep. And, you know, you also have this other element in the film where his sister, Mike's sister, she becomes like friends with the animatronics and she's like friends with them and she takes a liking to them, but eventually they end up trying to kill her because they want her to be another animatronic as well. Now, the animatronics themselves in this film, they look really good. They look awesome. They did a good job in the designs of them, straight from the video game. And another thing I like about this film, Matthew Lillard was pretty good in this film. I like that he was the villain. He was the head honcho of these animatronics. I thought that was pretty cool. Not a surprising twist, to be honest, but that was pretty cool. Some of the music in the film was pretty good. I also noticed the YouTuber Corey Kenshin was in here as a cameo, and he had one more scene later on. So that was pretty cool. They put him in there. Though I'm surprised Markiplier or PewDiePie wasn't here either because they're pretty big YouTubers, and I think they played Five Nights at Freddy's too, right? So I'm kind of surprised they didn't get them for the movie too. But this movie, Five Nights at Freddy's, it was just like it was 50-50, you know, like there was aspects I liked, like I liked Josh Hutcherson. Matthew Lillard should have had some more time. I liked him in the film. I liked the animatronics themselves. They looked cool. And, you know, some of the music was cool, but and I like the concept of the film, you know, somebody being a security guard, working night shift and having to deal with these animatronics, but you barely see anything happen with these fucking animatronics. It takes like an hour into the film for anything to even start happening, where the animatronics are killing one or two people, and the main character has to start fighting the animatronics and then dealing with Matthew Lillard's character. So you get some action there, but besides that, there's a huge lack of scenes focus on the Five Nights at Freddy's itself. It's crazy to me. You know, it really is. Like you call the movie Five Nights at Freddy's and it's not even like it feels like they're barely the focus. And also, the aspect from the game where it's 5 nights, you gotta survive 5 nights at Freddy's, it's been 5 nights, that's not even focused on in this movie at all. There's, like, no focus on that. There's no, "This is night 1, this is night 2." And then another thing is in the game, I remember the guy that hires whoever the main character is for the job, he talks to him during the nights. I don't know why they didn't do that with Matthew Lillard. They coulda had him in the movie more by having him talk to Josh Hutcherson and also not having Josh Hutcherson fall asleep on the fucking job. And, you know, it's just like, I can see why this movie got negative reception, you know, because this film is just disappointing, honestly. Like, what they should have did with this movie is it should have been more of a focus on the animatronics themselves, more of an actual focus on the Five Nights at Freddy's. There should have been more action in there. It should have been a much faster paced film. They should have had the animatronics doing more, killing more people. The film should have been rated R. Another thing I think that would have been interesting, instead of all this other fluff in the film we didn't need, like all the focus on Vanessa and Mike's interaction with her and the stuff going on in his life when the movie's called fucking Five Nights at Freddy's. I think what would have been interesting now that I think about it is you find out that, you know, the place back in the day was popular in the 80s, but there was a bunch of kids that went missing and they became the animatronics. Vanessa told the story. What I think would have been interesting, what would have served for some better time for this film to be used, they should have had a part of the film show that. Show back in the day, the 80s, the kids are at the place and show what happened to them. And you could show some more stuff with the animatronics or whatever was going on there. Matthew Lillard, what he was doing. Like, they could have did more with that. I would have rather them did more with that. If you want to do some exposition, if you want to do some storytelling that's not necessarily focused on the present or the Five Nights at Freddy's animatronics themselves, focus on that past stuff with whatever that was about. They could have covered that more. And yeah, like the film was somewhat watchable and I was interested in seeing it, but I would say I was disappointed in it. I was disappointed in it. I think the film could have been so much better. Having Matthew Lillard talk to the main character like how it was in the game, having more of the animatronics instead of them barely being in the film, and it should have been rated R. It had more gore in there. They should have had the aspects of the Five Nights like the game. Hell, the short film I saw on YouTube from Jack Pound, I think that's his name. He did a short film based on Five Nights at Freddy's where he's a security guard and he works at Five Nights at Freddy's. I remember watching that back in the day. That was way better than this movie, you know? And it's just a shame because it's a simple concept. Security guard, work a night shift at a place. Stuff goes wrong. He has to deal with all these animatronics. And like I said, for a huge part of the film, you may see the animatronics here and there. And there's like this one scene where these people try to break in and smash the place so they can get the main character in trouble because of that woman that has a vendetta against them with the court case and wanting to get that girl back. And the woman that's a babysitter that is working undercover with her, they make this plan where, hey, let's mess this workplace up and get him in trouble. They go there and they all get killed by the animatronics at Five Nights at Freddy's. And it's like that's one of the only scenes you get with the animatronics doing things. Other than that, you don't really get a whole lot in the film with the animatronics themselves until you get like an hour in. Then you get, the main character dealing with them. And then a little bit before that, the little girl's hanging out with them and stuff like that. I just thought this film could have been so much better. I think what would have made this movie better is they would have focused way more on the animatronics, Five Nights at Freddy's itself, show some more stuff of the past, maybe have Matthew Lillard interacting with the main character as he's working his Five Nights, incorporate the actual fucking Five Nights, so you could see more Matthew Lillard. Maybe if they did it that way, you wouldn't be as expected to see Matthew Lillard as the villain of the animatronics. Would have been more surprising. Have more action in there. Have it be rated R. Show more of the animatronics in there. Have them doing more, killing more people. Have just more going on in the film. Less fluff with what was going on with Mike's life and the dreams he's having about his brother. Less fluff about Vanessa and Mike. And a lot of that stuff could have been trimmed down and cut down. And, they could have showed us some of the story and some of the stuff with Mike and his brother and, some of the stuff with his sister and some of the stuff with that woman after him. They could have touched on that here and there, but that should not be that shouldn't have been the main focus of this film. That shouldn't have been what most of the scenes were focused on. It's a fucking horror film, man. And it wasn't scary at all. I mean, it's hard for me to be scared, to be fair, for most horror movies, but it sure wasn't scary. So yeah, overall, I thought the Five Nights at Freddy's movie, while it had some good actors in there, and Matthew Lillard was in there, and the animatronics looked really good, and the music was good, I think the film was a letdown, honestly. And I'm like, man, I can see why a lot of people weren't really crazy or really liked this one that much because it's a letdown. You barely see the fucking animatronics themselves. It's PG-13, so it can't be gory. That's why it should have been rated R. You should have seen the animatronics more. They should have got to do more in the film. They should have killed more people. Should have incorporated the Five Night thing. Should have incorporated Matthew Lillard talking to the main character. Like, there's just so much more they could have did with this film. And they just... another thing is, it feels like with this film, it almost felt like kind of an art house, artsy fartsy kind of like smart take on Five Nights at Freddy's. It feels like they were trying to be less of a fun horror film and more of like let's incorporate what Mike's going through in his dreams with the kids. And I don't know, it just at times I feel like it was trying to be a smart film or something. I don't know if anyone else got that vibe, but yeah, what a letdown this movie was, man. What a letdown. Could have been so much better. Hopefully they could do another one of this with where it's better because this was a letdown. Oh yeah, another thing I wanted to say, I didn't really care that much for Vanessa as a character. I didn't. Like when she first showed up in the movie, I was like her acting is kind of off. I wasn't really a fan of her actress. I wasn't really a fan of her character. I didn't really give a shit about her. I was like, I don't really care for her or what she had to bring to the movie. Didn't give a shit much about her. And it's like the film near the end, they kind of tried to make it seem like, oh, Matthew Lillard, he's the main bad guy. He made them do all this stuff. But it's like the other animatronics were still killing people. They were still murdering people. They should still take them down too because they're murderers. Yeah, Matthew Lillard is bad and he commanded them, but didn't the other animatronics do bad things too? What the fuck, you know? So yeah, disappointing film. Disappointing film. I don't review movies much, but I felt like talking about this film because I saw it today and I'm like, you know what? I want to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's. I used to, like I said, back in the day, I did a rant video and I didn't like it, but I changed my mind. I do like the thing. I do like Five Nights at Freddy's itself, but I think the movie itself was pretty lame. Yeah, fucking lame. If you want to see a better Five Nights at Freddy's movie, if it's still on YouTube, I know he took a lot of his videos on that thing, but if you can still find it, look for Jack Pound's Five Nights at Freddy's short film, or if you can find it, that's a better movie because I had more to do with Five Nights at Freddy's, more of the Five Night aspect, and it was just better overall. And that's what this movie should have been. It should have been better, you know? What a letdown. But I'm trying to think if there's anything else I could say about this film, Five Nights at Freddy's. No, not much else I could think of for this film. But other than that, that's it for this review of Five Nights at Freddy's, the movie. Mixed bag, but mostly a disappointment. Peace.